Happy Tuesday, all. I'm flying solo here tonight, which is totally fine. But I wanted to get on here tonight and uh, give you guys this week's code. Talk about this is the last week where we'll be doing fresh code. And also this will be the last week where this is recorded and published for you guys. After this week, I will be online on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 10:30 to assist you um, with any issues you have, any coding issues you have. If you're working on your final projects, I'll be here to help you as well. But after tonight, all the code that you need to know for the rest of this course will be complete. If you have any questions, go back to the previous 6 videos, or hop in here, leave a comment in the video, and I'll answer them on the weeks to come. If something happens in the next couple weeks that's super interesting and I want to make sure everyone gets it, I will report it and post it. But for the most part, after this week, this is the last recording that will be posted. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen out and go over the code for this week. All right. So this week we're going to be talking about some specific things that have to do with joins, and we're also going to talk about one of my favorite pieces of code, which is the case statement. So here I've got this join here. I've got select title, amount, and then date from film. I'm joining inventory. I'm joining film to inventory on the film ID. Then I'm joining rental to this on the inventory ID. And then I'm joining payment on the rental ID and ordering by the rental date. So I'm getting title, amount, and the rental date. And what this date command here does is it just gives me just the date, because that field is the date time. So the date and the time are both in there, but I only care about it's the date. Because I want to combine title, amount, and rental date, I've got to go to a couple different tables. Film and inventory are not directly linked. So I've got to go through, film and rental aren't directly linked. So I've got to go through the inventory table, and then I've got to go to the payment table to get everything else. So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to say use Zillow first, and then I'm going to say this. And here I've got the rental dates, when, then, how much they cost, which is what I wanted to do. Now, this is just the normal way of doing it. There's nothing fancy. There's no aggregates here. So I'm going to do a similar query here. I'm going to do it with an aggregate. So here, I'm going to select the title name. I'm going to get a count of how many times it's rented. So it'll give me all the number. It'll just say how many times there's something in the rental date column. And then I want the sum of the amounts. So this is going to tell me the title, how many times it was rented, and the total amount that was gotten from those rentals. And it's the same join structure. And what you'll see here is I've got a group by. So remember, whenever I have an aggregate function within my select statement, I must have a group by filter to say which column I'm aggregating by. This is an aggregate, this is an aggregate, this is not an aggregate. So my group by column must have title to tell what this is going to be aggregated by. So when I run this, I get Academy Dinosaurs, we rented 23 times, and the total rental was $36.77, and so on and so forth. You can see everything here. Okay. I have this command here called with rollup. And what with rollup does, it basically sums up each column when it's done. So if I run the same query, this exact same query as before, with the with rollup, down here, all the way at the bottom, I get the sum of this column and the sum of that column. That's all it does. It just sums up each column that's an aggregate. So here, a new command, I've got a group by, so this everything to this point is the same. I've got a group by because I've got, well, it's not the same. So I've got the aggregate count of title, and I've got the aggregate sum amount. So I'm reversing it here. I'm going to say, show me the date, how many titles were rented, and how much money I made that day. So in this case, instead of my aggregate being title, my aggregate column is going to be the date. Everything else stays the same. This is the same here. And I run this, and I get my answer. Now, I'm going to change something here. I have this having command. Having is the where clause for aggregates. I can't do where some amount is greater than 1,500 because that doesn't work because it's an aggregate. So having is what we do in this case. So here, I add this column having some amount of 1,500. So what this is saying is this column here, only show me that column when the aggregate is over 1,500. And I run that. And so now I have this, which is significantly less than with 41 rows. Here's. So this is fewer rows returned. But here's the thing. If I add the with roll up here, and I run this again, so this is 21, okay, this is 41. So if I run this without the having, I go here and my roll up column is this. I copy this over here. Okay. So if I do that with just roll up, that's what it is because there's no limitations. This is everything. But if I run this with the having and look at my aggregate, it's the same thing. So the roll up isn't affected by any filtering. It just shows everything. Not sure why it's used. It's been there. I've never used it. But there are questions on it. So you got the new command there is the having command. That is the filter of an aggregate. The last thing I'm going to talk about real quick here is probably the most granular way you can present data. So let's say I want to give information about a table, but I don't want to give the actual information, right? So here I'm selecting title and rating, okay, from film. But here I put this thing called a case statement in here, okay? And what the case statement does, it's a bunch of where then clauses. So case where rating equals R, then return the words not kids. When the rating is PG-13, return kids. And if anything other than these, return no one. And then I'm going to call that audience. So this word here after end is going to be the name of that column. So this is a giant filter of the ratings column. Okay. Even though the ratings column is here. So when I run this, I've got kids, no one, so on and so forth, right? But what I can do here is I can get rid of the ratings table and then run this. And now I've got the same thing. So I don't have the actual rating there. I just have who should be watching it. So this is pretty effective when you want to filter information out so people don't get the actual information, but they know what they're looking for. For example, if I was renting a car rental agency and I didn't want to rent to anyone under 25, I could do a case statement on a select query that looks at the age column. And if it says under 25, I just say not eligible rather than say 21, 22. I just say not eligible. That way there's no judgment call. There's no guessing. It just says not eligible on the front end for the customer or for the thing. So the customer puts their information in and you can use the case statement to say not eligible. Also in any other way, you can do that. So there's other ways to do it. This last one here, this last example I'm going to show you guys before I sign off for the night, this is literally an answer to one of the questions in the exercises. So if I run this is get the name of the language and the language ID. And I'm joining film to language, so I know what language the film is in, right? So when I run this, I'm grouping by, and since this is an aggregate, I have a group by. So if I run this, I can see that there are 463 English, 36 Japanese, French, and German. Okay. Now, a pivot table is when you take this table and switch it out. So instead of name and count, English, Japanese, French, and German would be the column headers. And then this first row would be this. There are commands in more advanced SQL engines there is a pivot command. But in case you wanted to do it the hard way, because you're using MySQL, there is no pivot command. What you do is here, you select, and then I have a sum clause here, case where language ID equals 1, then 1, else 0. So what happens here is when this select query runs, it goes through each row in the table. And if the language ID is 1, it ticks it 1 or it does 0. So for every row in the table, the language ID is 1, it adds 1 to the value. If it's 2, it adds 1. Same thing here. So if it's 2, it adds 1 to the value. And if it's 3, it adds 1 to the value. Okay. So if I run this like that, then I see I've got 463 English, 0 Italian, and 306 Japanese. Okay. So that's how you can take it and turn it into a pivot table. This is a very important. Case statements are incredibly important. They're a granular filtration system for your data to get people out there and show them what they need to see versus what they think they need to see. And having is the workflows. That's it for tonight. That's all I had. So sharing here. Like I said, this is the last recorded video of the semester because we will be talking about new codes. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you need to schedule any one-on-one time with me, please let me know. I'm always available. And if not, I will see anyone who wants to be here next Tuesday night at 9:30 to talk about final projects or answer any questions that you may have on the class. Take care, and I'll talk to you guys soon.